Really a special card which has risen in popularity and value over the last, say, decade to become one of the more coveted and hotly desired trading cards that has ever been produced, especially from the 1990s, which is part of that dead card era that spanned maybe almost 15 years where there weren't a lot of really unique issues produced. As the story goes, this 1990 Topps production was a separate full production run set aside for the president at the time, the sitting president, that Topps manufactured specifically for him. And the production quantities, though it's not carefully understood, there was both a glossy and the more standard matte version, which this is, which was produced. A certain percentage of these cards were then given directly to the White House, and what happened to them after that point is sort of anyone's guess, but it's believed that they were kind of handed out and probably to staff, and vast majorities discarded or mishandled. And then the Topps manufacturing, it's also assumed, had a few extras that they also had. We don't know if it was like 5 or 10 sheets of the cards or one sheet. The overall production quantities are not accurately defined, but it is an incredibly scarce card regardless. Whether there was a few hundred made or just 100 or 1,000, we'll never know, but it's extremely scarce from a production quantity perspective. And what's even more scarce is that these were not issued in packs. So what is always true when you're looking at these rare sort of like one-offs is however many the manufacturer made is one thing, but so few of them actually enter the market through viable means that usually those productions are some fraction of what was actually made actually enters it into the market, because these were never put into packs. So as it sits, this is definitely one of the finest copies that we've ever brokered. From an aesthetics perspective, it's a virtually gem mint card, cardstock wise. Centering is excellent, maybe a couple points off right to left, and then there's just a little bit of maybe excess print around the outside, but other than that, the corners, particularly this full bleed lower blue corner, is really high end. This is easily one of the best copies that we've ever seen. And it's one of these cards that I think as the market matures, this is one of these highly coveted issues that should have pretty good ROI. It checks a lot of boxes. And for those who haven't studied it, George Bush was quite the sports fan, very avidly in the game during his younger years, and has remained a strong baseball fan, especially throughout his life. So this wasn't just a a charade when they made this card for him. There was a lot of talent in those bones, and I think from an American perspective, baseball being America's pastime, definitely at the time our seating president was a fan and a passionate player himself. So it's a really cool card from his Yale days, and overall I just think from an investment perspective, it's a really neat production. It's neat that Topps went out of their way in this way. As I said, the cardstock from a corners and edges perspective is virtually gem mint. It's a really crisp example, maybe the sharpest copy that we've ever brokered. Just a little bit of excess print. It's about all we can see that really kept the card from grading higher technically. But as it said, it's just a beautiful example of a card which really you can't replace. We're lucky if we see 1 or 2 copies of this stuff a year. Really encourage the prospective investors to take a close look.